am I even looking for? The truth shall set you free.
Okay, hopefully that's better for everyone. Alright, so basically what I was saying is what Christianity did is they looked at what Jesus did and what the apostles did, and they said, alright, well that's it, that's the religion. They've given us the religion. So they took the form of what was being said by the apostles and by Jesus and said, okay, well this is it. And kind of forgetting the principle of, oh wait, this was supposed to be a revolutionary thing. And all along the time in the history of the world up to that point, there had been revolutionary developments of religion, which Christians accept up to the point of the writers of the New Testament. Now, moving forward in time, you have the birth of Islam. Now, Islam, they took a perspective where they said, hey, yes, we accept Moses, we accept Abraham, going back even further. And beyond Moses, we accept all these prophets, Solomon, and all these different people. And we accept Jesus and the apostles. But there's more. There's a revolution that needs to take place. And so Islam, in many ways, had that basic idea of, okay, this is a beginning of another phase of things. It's in continuity with the past, the claim is, but it has some element, a significant element of, all right, now there's a time for a reformation, a restoration, and a change. So this is the idea that Islam had. But what happened? Well, the followers of Muhammad, after he died, very quickly started to settle things where no longer did they have that principle, but they had the form of religion which Muhammad taught. And of course, that developed over time and is still developing over time. So, okay, right now, those are, we've covered the three main monotheistic religions, or supposed to be monotheistic. And so we've seen that they all have this revolutionary, but why does it all of a sudden stop? It's revolutionary all the way from the very beginning, all the way up to a point, and then it stopped. Now I want to jump forward a little bit in Christianity, because even though as a whole Christianity did take that perspective of, well, it's revolutionary to a point, and then it settled. Even though that's the case, Christianity still, especially ever since the Protestant Reformation, within Protestantism, you have development, and you have various movements. So you have Martin Luther. And what did he do? Well, he started a revolutionary movement, which ended up being called Lutheranism. But more broadly, it's the Protestant Reformation, and he was a key player in starting this Protestant Reformation. And so what happened in the Protestant Reformation is that you had different reformers come along. Luther came along, and he brought a reformatory message, and it was a need for a change. And what happened is, hey, many people ended up following that. But as time went on, Luther died, some of the other reformers died, and people settled. They said, okay, well, this is the religion. And then they didn't go beyond that. When, in order to keep with the principle of Martin Luther's idea, there should be a change. There should be revolution taking place. So, but that's not what happened for Lutherans. And then you have, John Knox, John Wesley, all of these different people bringing reformatory movements, which people ended up following, but then they didn't progress beyond that. So this general idea of believing that there's revolution to a point, believing that there's change to a point, and then it just stops and settles, that God has now brought us to the point of having the pure religion. And even though the religion develops over time, there's no real need for a great change. This is what I'm referring to as dead religion. Why? Because it's no longer living and expanding and growing and having the same principle which was at its foundation. So that is basically how religions develop, new religions start. Why? Because, well, now someone else comes with a new idea, but most people have settled. Consider this. If you believe that Christianity is true, and if you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, basically you have to take the position that the majority of Jews in Jesus' day were wrong in thinking that it has settled, that religion has now settled. There's prophecy is done, religion has settled. God has now given us the final form of our religion. Sure, maybe there's a few tweakings to take place, but no, this is it. You have to believe that the majority of those Jews were wrong. So now here's the thing. If you are of the perspective that religion has kind of settled now, that God has brought to a point, whatever you believe, whether you believe that that point came in Christianity in the 1st or 2nd century or whatever, or whether you are a Muslim and you believe that that was settled in the time of Muhammad, you believe that the majority of the people at that day were wrong. They were sincerely deceived in thinking, oh, well, religion has now taken its final form and that's it. So here's the thing. Today, the majority of people in various religions believe that this is it, that God has now given the final form of religion. And I'll say even today, in Christianity, in the 19th century, there is a lot of movements called restoration movements. Mormonism, Seventh-day Adventism, Jehovah's Witness, a number of other different movements that started at that time. And they had this whole principle of moving forward, progression, and so on. But what has happened with those religions? They have basically stopped having revolution. They have stopped having a real large change or something significant and radical within their own religion. It basically came, the form was given, and it was settled. So whatever religion you may have been, or you may be in right now, what if you're wrong? What if the final form of religion hasn't actually come? What if, just as it has been all throughout history that you acknowledge, there has been changes, revolutions, movements, calls for reformation, all these different things. What if another one of those comes today? Will you be of the perspective that, well, the final form of religion is here, so that can't be right? And think about this too. When these changes came, when these different leaders rose up, whether it's Martin Luther or Jesus or whoever, when these leaders rose up, it was never the people who the bulk of the religion would expect. In Jesus' day, people were not expecting, if there was to be some great change, they would expect it would be, the resurrection of Elijah the prophet, or they must have believed it would be someone that was a leading priest. In fact, the leaders in his day said, and this is recorded in the book of Acts, do any of the leaders or the chief priests believe in Jesus, the Nazarene? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Who is this son of Joseph the carpenter? It just seems so far out that, oh yeah, that would be the guy who would be bringing something new. Same thing in every generation. Martin Luther was nobody special until he actually moved forward and did what he was doing. So it was totally unexpected, and people would think, if there is supposed to be anything new, it's supposed to come from the leadership within our organization, or it's supposed to come from within our religion. In John 4, you have the discussion with Jesus and the woman at the well. She was a Samaritan. He was a Jew. She believed that the Samaritan religion was the right religion. She wasn't expecting someone from Judaism to be the Messiah, but lo and behold. So here's the thing. In order to just simply be careful not to make the same mistakes that people have made in the past, take that as a warning. Say, hey, wait a second. I believe that there's been at least a number of occasions in the past where the majority of people have believed that religion has kind of settled now, and I believe that they're wrong. If you believe Jesus, if you believe the apostles, whether you believe Muhammad or you believe Judaism in general, whatever the case may be, you believe that some point in the past, the majority of the people were wrong, thinking that religion has basically settled, but there was a revolution that had to take place. So again, coming to the question, what if today, and here's the thing, if you believe in any of these religions, you believe that they were built upon this principle. So my question to you is, why has this principle stopped? Why would it be that, oh, God just doesn't have anything else to say? You know, God doesn't have anything new for us. Are we really so perfect in our form of religion that we shouldn't expect to have to change it? Is that where we're at? Have we reached the highest point on the mountain? Well, this is something I really ask you all to consider, because obviously it's important. If we don't take the perspective of at least openness to some form of religion that's progressive, if we don't at least take a stance of openness to that, then are not we in grave danger of falling into the same mistake that generation after generation has made? That's the perspective that people took to reject Jesus. And that's the perspective that people took to reject all these different prophets. So consider this, and as a last note, I'll say, go ahead, read the book of Judges. If for any of you who take the Bible seriously, go and read the book of Judges and see how you see this cycle happening over and over and over again, where people would be in sin, they would be in a state of wickedness, they would be oppressed by a foreign nation, and then some sort of deliverer or prophet would be risen up. They would have a revolution, they would be delivered, and then during the lifetime of the prophet, they would prosper as a people. And then what would happen is the prophet would die, and they would all go back into sin. Everything would change, their political structure, their religion, everything would change. And then there would have to be another, basically, again, they would end up going into sin and wickedness, and then they would come under a foreign oppressor, and then another messenger would be risen up to deliver them and have a reformation. This is just the nature of things, how things have happened time and time again, and the book of Judges is just one clear example to show that. So I want to invite you all to read that, and you can probably tell I believe that religion, true religion, must continue. True religion is a living thing. It doesn't have revolution and then ends. So I believe that today, just as in points in the past, that God is causing revolution, development, progression of religion. And I invite you all to find out what it is. Seek. Don't have the perspective that it's just done. Seek for truth. Expect change. Don't be satisfied with your current form of religion. Anyways, blessings to you all. Feel free to comment and we can discuss things. I could make another video in reply to any comments or questions. So yeah, I think that's about it for now. So blessings to you all, and Shabbat Shalom.